Yes, everyone. Welcome back to the Irish Hotspur, back with the Irish guys for your Thursday weekly panel show. We're going to be asking them about Igor Tudor. Of course, last time I spoke with Jack, we were discussing about Johan Lange, Vinay Venkatesham, and whether they would even be bringing in a manager by the end of the weekend. Luckily, they did, but it was someone totally out of left field. Forgive the baseball reference, but it was someone that we probably didn't know much about, maybe had heard of once or twice before, maybe during his playing days or during his time with Marseille and Juventus, but it was definitely not a name on anyone's lips. I'm going to be asking Colin and Jack what their reaction was towards Igor Tudor, whether they're feeling positive about it, maybe a new re-energized feeling or a bit of optimism towards how the rest of the season can go. And also, of course, with the looming North London Derby game, whether they feel more confident with him in charge. And also, as well, we'll be discussing what James Lawrence Allcott had to say about Igor Tudor in his tactical breakdown. Normally, I don't watch a lot of his videos, but I did find it interesting just to see what he had to say about his tactics. And he labeled them too risky, even though he was a huge proponent and a huge fan of Thomas Frank. I wonder if there was a little slight bias there coming from Lawrence Allcott, maybe being a little bit sad that his man Thomas Frank ended up getting the sack, who he was a big proponent of and a big fan of. So lots to chat about. We'll also be trying to chat about some breaking news that Jack just told me in the background about, and also as well, if there is time for it, the loved Christian Romero. We'll be talking about because Ange Postecoglou had a little bit to say about him, and maybe some of the Romero haters might have to consider, what this guy brings to the football club and the dressing room. Good to see so many people in the house. Do smash the like button for us as you're coming in here. Also, as well, feel free to make yourselves known in the chat, like Callum has, like Jorgen has, like Sean Maddox. Good to see you, Sean. And then Giant is in here as well. Please let us know how you guys are doing. And also, any stage, if you want to support the channel, welcome to become a member or throw in a super chat if you have an opinion that you would like us to discuss. And to all the members, at the end of the show, we will try to save time to answer any of your guys' questions in the post section. But Jack, like I said, last week, we were discussing about Vinay, Lange, whether they would even be able to sign an interim manager by Monday. Luckily, they have. I would say, though, that maybe this was an interim manager that you and I probably had no idea was on the cards. It was Paratici's man that we knew about earlier on in the season. What do you make of the fact that they've gone back to the one that Paratici wanted? And also the fact that they didn't go for an interim manager that has any Premier League experience whatsoever.
I just off the top of my head, I think it was last week. I think I mentioned his name in passing, saying Paratici wanted him earlier in the season.
Could be it.
And didn't think anything of it. And then next thing you know, a couple of days later, he's our new manager. And I was fairly, somewhat critical of it now. I think it was probably 2 sentences. I think I said they got rid of Paratici and who he wanted was Tudor. So I don't necessarily think that was a huge amount better than Frank. But having kind of sat on it now for a few days, listened to what people have to say that kind of know him better than me, I kind of just knew him was the guy who failed at Juventus and it bounced around a good few clubs. But I'm fairly positive on him being able to do a job between now and the end of the season. I think he's taken sort of 4 of these jobs mid-season and he's pretty much achieved what his goal was in every single one of those jobs. So I'm pretty, I guess he has a track record of maybe these short-term jobs working out, but maybe when it gets that 6 to 12 month period, that's when he starts to falter. But at the end of the day, we need him to have a good 3 months, even one good month where he picks up 3 wins. That's sufficient for what we're looking for. So I'm fairly pleased with it. I think he should be an upgrade on Thomas Frank anyway. I'm more optimistic towards the weekend than I would have been if Thomas Frank was in the dugout. I think from listening to what people that kind of would know Italian football and Juventus better than I would, he seems to be a guy who kind of is well able to motivate players. I heard of someone describe him as kind of Antonio Conte light, which I know Conte's far from perfect and maybe sometimes has issues with players, but when things are going well for Conte, you kind of can't help but fall in love with them because of the passion he brings. When you have someone like Thomas Frank who lacked such a personality and basically bigged up our biggest rivals to go to someone that you kind of feel will actually be batting for us in sort of a way that Ange was, that Ange used to say that he was the only one defending us. It'd be nice to have someone come in and just do that and maybe say, well, we want to go out there and win against our biggest rivals, whereas Thomas Frank probably would have bitten your hand off for a draw. Tudor's first interview, he said he clearly outlined that he understood how massive this game is on Sunday. And he outlined that basically for him, it's win at all costs, draws and losses mean nothing to him. So when you saw Frank celebrating, I think it was Brentford away, getting a point there, like he's just the total opposite of it. So I'm fairly optimistic of it, and I think if he gets off to a good start at the weekend, he'll be hopefully we'll have some forward momentum on to the rest of the season.
Yeah, well, it's not been a good week for Thomas Frank because he got sacked and his favorite team, Arsenal, have dropped points in the last couple of games. So it's not been a great week for Sir Thomas. And Dave and I were discussing that quote that Igor Tudor said that no manager he's ever met would ever play for a draw. Well, it sounds like you never met Thomas Frank because Thomas Frank absolutely loved and adored praising any draws that would come for Spurs. But to you, Colin, Igor Tudor, not sure if you've ever heard of him. Maybe you had to Google him like Danny Rose probably did. What do you make of that appointment? And what do you make of the fact that he's not someone that maybe a lot of us were thinking of, the Tim Sherwoods, the Harry Redknapps, an Allardyce type guys with Premier League experience, lots of experience being interim managers as well. Are you all right with someone that has no experience at all in the Premier League?
In short, yes. So first of all, thanks for having me back, and hello to everybody tuning in. I haven't been on since Thomas Frank got the sack, so I did have very mixed feelings about that. But I suppose overall kind of relieved there's a change, not necessarily relieved he's gone, but relieved that there's a change, and hopefully we can improve results. And I'm sure that's all been covered, so I'll leave it there. With regard to Tudor, a bit like everything that Jack said, I agreed with. I actually hadn't heard of him in God knows how long. I remember him from way back being a defender, but I actually didn't realize that he was even in management, would you believe? So a bit of Googling to find out what he's been up to. So I'm on the same page now as everybody else in terms of understanding what he's done. And he certainly feels like he's the right man for the job. If it's, I appreciate that he doesn't have Premier League experience. I'm not so sure how important that really is, because everybody's very familiar with the Premier League, and I'm sure he is too. I appreciate that actually stepping into the arena is very different than watching it from the outside. But in terms of going in and managing teams in a short term to achieve absolutely must-win results, he looks like the right man for the job. So obviously remains to be seen whether he'll be a success, but I'm optimistic. And certainly he'll come into an environment that I suppose we feel is hostile, but he would have dealt with plenty of far more intimidating and hostile environments in the likes of Lazio and Juventus, where those storm training grounds if things aren't going right. So I think he'll be okay. And he certainly, in regards to his physical, how physically imposing he looks, he's not a fella I'm going to pick a fight with. Whereas Thomas Frank, you felt you could just ignore, like Spence and Van de Ven did. Whereas I think Tudor is going to pick you up and put you in the rubbish bin before you know what's what. Or he certainly looks like it anyway. So I'm excited to see what he does. And in relation to your question around the Sherwoods and Redknapps, that's all fantasy. They haven't managed in the Premier League in God knows how long. And with all due respect to them, I'd say, their time has probably passed them by. This guy is in, he's in the living, breathing thick of it, and he's been through this type of environment before very recently. So, to my mind, he's the right man, or that style of appointment is the right man for the job, and hopefully he turns out to be it.
Yeah, I think as well, it's a hard thing for us regular fans to be knowledgeable of interim managers. It's a very specialized type of manager, to be honest, and that's why probably the Redknapps and those do get mentioned. And it does seem like maybe there are more of these types of specialist guys like Igor Tudor in other leagues than really the Premier League at the minute. The only real interim type that I can think of on a recent basis is potentially someone like a Allardyce or maybe a Sean Dyche with maybe more recent Premier League experience, but there aren't too many knocking about. So I'm not that surprised that he's someone that no one expected really. And it's kind of up to the club to do their research on this type of thing. If they are to go on an interim manager basis, it's not really up to us fans to have ideas on the top of our head. But Dave, I've gotten your reaction to Tudor plenty of times, so I'd maybe pass this one off to you first about maybe this video that I saw from James Lawrence Allcott about labeling Igor Tudor's play style is too risky. And in fact, he labeled it as a gamble by Spurs. he's supposed to be a manager that plays on the front foot, plays a very aggressive style, lots of running, lots of physicality. Exhibit A would be that Marseille game that we played away from home where they absolutely dominated us for large periods, even though they only really needed to play for a draw and ended up actually coming back to haunt them. Would you have wanted a more pragmatic manager like a Sean Dyche style one, or are you all right with us going with an attacking manager, considering all we need to do is just avoid relegation?
Look, I've made it no secret. I'd rather go down swinging than submitting to the opposition and going down that way without a whimper, to be brutally honest with you. And I think, look, when you look at the history of pragmatic managers at Tottenham, they don't last too long, do they? And for me, I'm just not sure. When you look at the basis of how it panned out under Thomas Frank, start of the season, the likes of Burnley, Man City, we went after them, pressed high, scored goals off the back of it, and we're able to win games that way. Then you look to recent games before he's sacking, Newcastle, Man City, Aston Villa in the Cup looked so much better in the second half once the handbrake was taken off. He basically said, fuck my tactics, go for them. Basically employed Andrew's old tactics back again to a certain degree. And we look much better that way. But I'm not surprised. The bulk of the squad was built to play that way. But not only that, when you look at some of the summer signings we brought in, they're attacking players. They all want to play that way. And there's no surprise that they look better when we do. So for me, I think they had to bring in someone that was going to play a bit more on the front foot. At the end of the day, if you want to beat relegation, it's not about sitting in trying to get draws and scraping results, because you're going to be like that all the way through to game 38. No one wants to be here like that. For me, there's 12 games left, and I'd rather go after the opposition and try and score goals. Goals is what's going to get you out of this mess. Goals is what wins games. Winning games put 3 points on the board and separates you further from the chasing pack. So for me, I prefer to go and play attacking football. Thomas Frank was far too negative from the outset, defensive, and then relied on set pieces to go and win games. And as we've seen, it's not sustainable at this level, especially with the players we have. And just in general, my whole lifetime, even if we've tried to sit in and take a draw with 10 minutes to go, we always end up crumbling. We always end up conceding. We're not a team that can sit in and play for results like that. We are a team that goes for oppositions and tries to win games of football. And I'm glad we're getting back to that, Jack. The last 6 months have been absolutely hell for me. I've been waking up, sucking my thumb, cradling myself like a baby. I'm glad that, we a fresh approach to things is what I want to see. I think you'll get a lot more out of someone like Xavi Simons, for instance. Like, a lot of people have their bugbear that he loses possession far too much, but a lot of time when he gets the ball, no one ahead of him. There's no
options.
Yeah. And I think, with Tudor, you will see more of that. And I think you'll see much better from Xavi Simons. I think you'd hopefully start seeing him to dictate games. I think you'd probably get a lot more out of Colin Mawani, a player that everyone was very excited for coming in, but Thomas Frank never, ever really played to Mawani's strengths. Even if you look at the good games from Mawani under Thomas Frank, it's when we either played him in behind or played the ball to his feet. None of this long ball crap, putting balls in the box and, asking him to go after him. I get that that is a part that all great strikers should have. They should have a bit of everything in their locker. But the fact is, Mawani doesn't have that aggression like a Richarlison or Solanke to go and get on the end of a cross. So for me, I'm hoping, by playing to Mawani's strengths, by playing to his feet, putting him in behind, we'll start getting goals out of him. And for me, if we can get him firing alongside Dominic Solanke, that'll be enough to pull us away from this relegation battle. So I think it's the right way, and I think it's the right approach.
And to you, Jack, on his style potentially being a gamble or too risky, Thomas Frank was hyped up by the same guy, Lawrence Allcott, for being the right manager for Spurs, the guy that could instill a balance of attacking football as well as defensive football. Turns out that wasn't really true at all. But do you trust Igor Tudor to be able to provide an aggressive style of play that maybe we need?
Yeah, I think I know James Allcott. I know he's had Frank on his thing a couple of times, which I think is a big part of why Frank was protected by the media, is that he was very good for doing stuff like that, where he'd actually go out of his way to he didn't really have to do that stuff, and most managers don't. I think he went on Monday Night Football. He was on with James Allcott twice. I know he did a day in the life and stuff. So that kind of does build a bit of a relationship. And maybe he's like, oh, well, my pal Thomas Frank is gone. So I'm kind of just going to say Tottenham are downgrading. Because I know you see a lot of people within the Tottenham fan base who are big fans of Ange were nearly quite quick to get on Thomas Frank, maybe slightly unfairly at the start, just because he replaced Ange. So I think sometimes that is a part of it, where you're someone that gets the one you like got replaced by someone else, so you nearly go after them for that reason. But I think I agree with pretty much everything Dave said. Really, we just need to go at teams, and I think these after the Arsenal game, we have 2 games before the Champions League starts up against Fulham away and Palace at home. If we go at both of those teams, we should be beating them more often than not. If we can get a point at the weekend and win both of them, that's 7 points. In my book, that's us out of trouble for the time being if we can get those 3 results.
Yeah.
And then we can actually just worry about the Champions League and trying to pick up as many wins as possible in the league. Whereas with Thomas Frank, he'd be like, oh, well, a point against Arsenal, a point against Fulham, and then we try and beat Palace. The next thing you know, you've lost Arsenal, drawn with Fulham and drawn with Palace, and you've got 2 points and you're under even more pressure. Whereas Tudor's going to go out to win all 3 of those games. Now, whether at the weekend that comes back to bite us, I don't know. But we saw how Arsenal were last night. Once the pressure came on them, they crumbled. Yeah. And the reality is, if we play on the front foot and don't concede an early goal against Arsenal, the whole stadium will be behind that team for the first time in quite a while. I was at the Liverpool game and the fans got behind the team, and Richarlison scored, and we kind of had to go, but at the same time, we weren't good enough to get an equaliser. But other than that, I can't remember the last time the whole fan base was kind of behind the team in a game. So I just think getting the crowd back on side alone will be such a big win from, and that's what you get from playing front foot football. You get a bit more patience. And if we go out and make a statement win against Palace, even if the next 2 go badly, and then you get the Palace game at home, we go and beat them 3 or 4-0. Suddenly it's like, well, he's lost 2 of his first 3 games potentially, but people saw something then in that 3rd game and go, okay, well, we believe in this guy. Whereas Thomas Frank, he'd win a game and you'd still be like, well, we're just delaying the inevitable. Whereas with him, I think it could be like, well, even if not every result goes our way, we'll pick up enough points between now and the end of the season with how he wants us to play. So I think that just gets the fans back engaged. And just in terms of getting the players back enjoying their football, they all seem like they had the weight of the world on their shoulders every time they went out to play a game. And listen, I know different people have different opinions on the squad and they've not painted themselves in the best light over the last 2 years. But I think there's some really, really good players in there. We might only have 13 or 14 available, but that group of 13 or 14 are more than good enough to be picking up some results. And I just think they need to believe in themselves again and have someone that can get them to believe in themselves rather than someone that's saying, we should be scared of the opposition. How can we stop the opposition? We want someone that's going to say, how can we hurt the opposition? And what can we do to score goals and defend well, basically, rather than how do we stop them? So I just think even just a change of voice. And I think you saw that was the big thing Ange did, was he was just so different to what Conte and Mourinho were doing. And players just bought into it straight away. And that run we went on the first 10 games, we get 10 games even half as good as that would be absolutely fine. So I just think getting the players behind the manager is something that he will be able to do. And even from just his interview that he gave, I started to believe in him. It felt like nearly we had won 3 games in a row after I'd watched that interview. Like, it just felt so better about supporting us. I was nearly debating whether I was actually going to go to the match on Sunday. And now I'm buzzing for it. I can't wait to go. I can't wait to get my big fry up and get a load of double points into me and go and watch us beat Arsenal. And I just feel I'm enjoying actually supporting us again, even though we haven't played a game yet. And whether I'll come back and have egg on my face next week is another
You will from the fries.
Yeah, but I just want a manager that makes me believe. And players I think want that as well. And you can kind of, I don't know about the 3 years, but I just feel something a bit different. And I think that'll translate to the players. They'll probably be feeling that same way as well if I'm feeling like that. Because even in a 5-minute interview, he just came across so well. And I think that'll come across in how the players perform. And these next 3 games, I think, well, I hope anyway, we go, geez, thank God we're out of trouble and we don't have to worry anymore.
I think I was sort of saying that last night as well, Jack. I agree with you. I think just naturally the change in manager would rejuvenate the Spurs fan base, in terms of getting up for this relegation battle. I think you'll see a complete different atmosphere at home this weekend towards what it maybe would have been under Frank. I think under Frank, people would have went in already beaten. It would have been subdued. You would have had a few people trying to get up for it, but the majority would have sort of overruled, and just it would have been a weak atmosphere. And, I wonder, would there have still been empty seats? Would people have just gone, I'm not turning up to be embarrassed like that on a Sunday? So I think naturally the change will give a breath of fresh air within the supporters. But I also believe within the playing squad as well. You know, I feel like a lot of them will feel like the shackles are taken off them from being in dressing rooms and stuff. When you've got a guy that is ultra structured, ultra defensive, it does take its toll on you over a long period of time, you know, especially if you're an attacking player. That attacking players usually love a bit of freedom. They just want basic instructions, but a lot of that is outside of that is usually freedom. And I think you'll see a lot of them sort of renewed, you know, with a fresh approach and go after them. I think you'll see it like a bit like what's happened with Carrick at Man United since he's walked in after they sacked that other fraud. So for me, I think it'll be the same, to be brutally honest with you, in that regard. Just on James Lawrence Allcott, just quickly as well, I believe his fears are around Tottenham going pressing and stuff like that. Now, I do understand that to a certain degree. Like under Postecoglou at times, we were so open, and I wouldn't say to people, get ready for that high line again, you know, because it is something that Tudor does like to play. But for me, you know, I say to supporters, what's worse? Sitting off the way we did and getting your striker to come in and play centre midfielder out of possession, or actually going after teams and looking to win the ball higher up the pitch, because we're not the most blessed in terms of being able to rip teams open. But one thing we've done well under Frank, Man City, Burnley, we forced our fullback, centre-back, goalkeeper into mistakes, which meant we got the ball one pass and we were in. You almost couldn't miss. And I think we need to get back to that. So although I understand James Lawrence Allcott's sort of concerns around it, and there's always an element of, you know, risk involved when you're going to play attacking football, aggressive on the press and stuff like that. But fortune favors those who's brave, and it always has done. No matter what facet you apply that to in life, the ones who are the bravest always get the biggest reward. So for me, that's the way we should go after it.
Well, I mean, there's so many Spurs fans, though, that are kind of like Paul here, saying that they would prefer to lose a game 3-4 and actually watch some exciting football with that intent and that desire that he says, than rather praising a 1-1 draw. And that's kind of the reason why Spurs fans so quickly, I think, turned on Thomas Frank. They also as well, even though we had probably some of the best results since Pochettino under Jose and under Conte, there was not a lot of love for those guys either because of the style of play, to be fair as well. It just, I think as a Spurs manager, you always do better if you play with a bit more freedom and you play with a bit more bravery.
It's about belief, chat. We've always been the underdog. Even when we broke into the top 6, Premier League, Cup finals, Champions League finals, we're always the underdog. You know, and that's just the way we see ourselves. And, you know, that's why we would rather go and be brave, go and have something to believe in, you know, at the end of the day. And that's just the way Tottenham has always been my whole lifetime. You know, we've gone for games, and that's what will appease the majority of the supporters.
Well, Colin, Jack just earlier seemed to be already floating, even though a ball hasn't been kicked yet under Igor Tudor. He seemed to really love the change of style to something a bit more aggressive. What do you make of the fact that he is supposed to be bringing a much more aggressive style of play? Do you find that to be too much of a risk?
I'll go if that's okay with you, Jack.
Yeah, work well, yeah.
There's an element of risk no matter what we do, but I do think this squad is better front-footed than it is defensively, like it has been, or trying to contain the opposition. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen, and there's probably no point in rehashing all the examples, we've seen enough examples of that this season to prove that our squad is good going forward and can score goals and isn't necessarily overly leaky at the back with the quality of defender that we have or have had once they aren't suspended. The thing that stuck out for me was obviously Tudor is talking about being front-footed and aggressive and going to win matches. But then the key to his point was, but being smart. So he's obviously aware you can't just go gung-ho, a bit like our former manager Ange, and just leave the door wide open for the opposition. So I'm hoping he's got enough about him to be able to find that balance and have it attuned so that we can win matches. I don't necessarily agree that it's risky. It was risky to keep Frank. It's risky to appoint Tudor. It's risky left, right, and centre. So to me, we had to introduce change because doing the same thing over and over again is clearly not working. I do think I agree with the essence of Paul's point that and I've said this numerous times on this broadcast, you always want to see endeavour, hard work, And if you lose on the day, you lose on the day. You shake hands with the opposition and you go home. What we couldn't sustain was feeling that the handbrake was on, feeling that we weren't working to our strengths, and feeling that we were spending far too much time worrying about what they were going to do to inevitably fail. And the biggest example of that was the previous London Derby, which was just a horrific match to watch from beginning to end. So I don't blame Jack for thinking about not going. Where, you know, it just was so obvious we had set up to do something to try and nullify them. We couldn't, and then we just had nothing else to do. But it's not sustainable to keep losing matches in that fashion either. So, you know, Tudor gets a pass. If we play exciting football and we lose against Arsenal, we lose whatever our next game is, I just can't recall as I'm speaking, Fulham. And if we see that it's full of endeavour and full of promise, you get a pass. Third and fourth match, if you're still losing, you know, your attitude and your outlook changes. So, yeah, I agree with that sentiment. But ultimately, the game is about winning. It's a results-based business. But I don't think it's going to be too risky. It was too risky to leave Thomas Frank in where he was with the precarious situation we found ourselves in the table. And just to refer to the ground and the fans, I think they've boxed themselves in pretty much like we all have, really. We've no choice but to get behind this man now. We didn't know who it would be. It is Tudor. So we're boxed in because we want to change.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, fans, here's your change. Obviously, we have no say in what that change is. And you have to allow them to do their job, and you assume they'll do it properly, although there's no evidence of that at all.
Well, a bit of a make your bed, now you have to lie in it kind of thing.
Correct, for the fans, yeah. So, I mean, there has to be, for Tudor, he can't lose in respect to the first 4 or 5 games. We have to get behind him. We have to give him, although it'll be a very short window of time, to get to grips with the Premier League, the squad, the playing style, the injuries, whatever else. But I mean, that can quickly evaporate too. But in the very first instance, and for a short window, we've no choice. But we have to get behind him. We have to roar the team on, and we have to play our part, or they in the ground have to play their part, ushering the team on. And it's very easy to change the atmosphere. Again, as we saw against City, 2 totally different halves of football and 2 totally different crowds. You'd swear you cleaned one crowd out and put in a rent-a-crowd for the second one. They were so enthusiastic. But that was representative of what was being served up to us, or to them. I keep saying us as in the royal us. I wasn't there. But it being served up to the people in the stadium, attractive, front-footed, let's have a go. I know it's terribly English to say, but, you know, up and at 'em and all that other malarkey that they come out with. But that's what you want to see. You want to see endeavour and effort, and that's all you can really ask for. And after that, the guys that you're playing against either beat you or they don't. But sitting back and letting them come at you and trying to contain them just is such a source of frustration, as will losing be, even if we are front-footed. But we'll wait and see.
Well, we've seen that on the ranch, didn't we? You know, even if you're losing consecutive games, trying to play that way, yeah. I do understand your point. What I will say is, though, Colin, I do think it's also on the players as well. You know, it's clear a lot of them want to change. A lot of them weren't having Thomas Frank with some of the stuff that we've seen come out. And the fact that only 3 players have really made, you know, post to thank him for his time and all, I think the players have nowhere to hide now either. You know, there's been a lot of question marks around the quality of them, how good they really are and stuff like that. And I think, you know, they've got no option but to sort of, you know, come out now and perform as well. They can't hide behind Thomas Frank and his coaching team anymore. They're gone. Just while you were speaking, though, as well, something else that sort of popped into my mind is, you know, we speak about the club having its own ethos. How can you have a motto to dare us to do, and then you're going to bring in managers, you know, sometimes the odd time, that come in and tell you how great Wolves are, how great Burnley are, how great fucking Bodo Glimt are, and stuff like that. You know, how it just doesn't match up. And I'm not being funny, but if I'm a player under a manager like that, I'm pointing to the club motto. I'm like, to dare us to do. This is the whole ethos of the football club. You know, this is what this whole football club is about. This is the motto that they preach when, you know, in business meetings trying to secure sponsorship when they're not sure. To dare us to do, okay, grand, sign on the dotted line. Same with the players, stuff like that. So, you know, if that's your club motto, you can't then go and employ pragmatic managers because it just doesn't add up. It goes against everything this club has been built on. The motto that this club has been built around, it goes against that completely. And just to swell on the element of risk, I think where the element of risk does come in is when you are playing a more aggressive game and you're expected to run a bit more. you're taking on a heavier workload. We already are shelled with injuries at this moment in time. There is a risk in that regard that maybe you pick up a couple more because they just can't handle it. They're not robust enough and stuff like that. So that's for me where the element of risk actually comes in with the Tudor appointment is the fact that he's brought in his own physical coach and stuff. You're hoping will sort of help that process. But I think that's where the element of risk comes in. As we've seen under Ange Postecoglou, you do pick up a lot of injuries, muscle injuries and hamstring injuries playing this way. And I think that's where the fear comes in.
And I agree with that because although I'm not sure, Jack might kick me off the stream for talking too much about Arsenal and talking them up.
Thomas Frank has got into you.
Yeah, such a Frank convert now. You guys just hold on there. And I'll tell you all about how great Arsenal are. The point I'm trying to make is if you look at Arsenal now, not that we should ever look at their direction, but they are struggling in the league, right? And they're not in Europe, which is pretty much where we are, right? And that's all to do with energy, freshness. And it does show that the Premier League is absolutely and totally a step up and you cannot take your foot off the gas. You have to be 100%, all of that. And it just goes to show, even with the money that they've spent and whatever else, being involved in 4 different, are they still in 4? I think they're still in 4 competitions.
All of them.
It just goes to show what happens. I mean, what happened yesterday for Arsenal has never happened before. I'm sure you saw that on Sky Sports earlier this morning as you were all getting ready for your day of commerce. The bottom club has never beaten the top club ever before, I believe, if I heard it right over the shower. But, so it just does go to show, and it just rings true for me what's happening to us as well. Can't quite get it done in the league because of energy. And the energy is because the recruitment's been poor. We have a decimated squad. We're asking and squeezing the last piece of toothpaste out of that tube of every single player that we have. So, yeah, Dave is absolutely right to point that out. But hopefully, because a lot of energy is also psychological, if you have it right upstairs, you'll find the extra energy. And as a man who's ran a marathon in his lifetime before, most of it is psychology. You can get your body to do it. So hopefully they can find that spring. Everything feels a bit fresher. Running is a little bit easier. And hopefully it all comes good. But that's certainly something I've observed is that that's what Arsenal is suffering from at the moment, which is why they look good in Europe. And then they look a little bit lackluster in the Premier League, and it is all to do with energy. Sorry, I'm so sorry, Jack. That just Dave inspired me as well. I'm sorry to cut across you. The players as well. I know when I was speaking previously, I was just probably speaking exclusively about managers, but to me, the players have an awful lot to answer for, both for the position that we're in, for getting Thomas Frank and previous managers to sack. But I always worry, and this is why I was happy that Thomas Frank was actually appointed in the first place. Totally accept it didn't work out. I mean, you'd want to be blind man not to see that. But when he was coming in, it was exciting, for inverted commas, for me, because I felt like he was a little bit less chaotic and very organized. Now, it didn't work out that way because I think we all couldn't see how, I suppose, lack of charisma he would have. But I do feel that we have a playing squad and probably a club that feels like, oh, here comes the latest manager. Just roll your eyes. We'll all just wait until he gets a sack, and then another one comes in, and then another one comes in, and we're all getting paid our 150 grand a week. So it doesn't really matter because no matter what happens, I'm not losing my job. He will, and I feel that is prevalent in our club.
Yeah,
certainly for the last, I'd say 10 years. Tottenham Hotspur is a place where you go to get okay wages, not great wages, but you're not going to be asked to do much. And sure, at the end of the day, if it's not working out, you can just kind of down tools a little bit and eventually Levy will step in, sack the manager, and a new manager come in. We just start the cycle again. But I'll drive out the door in my Lamborghini. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. And I genuinely feel that way. I genuinely feel that the playing squad there wait out every single manager because they know that the manager will get the bullet. And that's why I was so happy to see Frank coming in. I was so happy he didn't get sacked at the first sign of trouble. Appreciate he had to go when he had to go. But, to have stability and to have players who realize, oh, Jesus, I better pull up me socks here and get something done because this manager isn't going to go. Yeah. But in the end, they still did it. They still managed to get him out the door. It's just incredible.
Just, Jack, on the point that Dave brought up earlier about injuries and the potential of more of them happening because we're going to be going back to supposedly more aggressive style of play. How do you think Igor Tudor handles that, knowing that he really can't risk any more injuries at all? Like Odebear now out for the season is Thomas Frank's parting gift to him. So what would you say about that in terms of going back to an aggressive style play, something similar to Ange in terms of trying to avoid injuries still?
The reality is players have had a week and a half between the Newcastle game and this game. I know they had 5 days off where they could go off on their holidays and do whatever they want, relax or whatever, and try and recuperate a little bit. And then we have a week break between the Arsenal match and the Fulham match. And I think then we have another free midweek before the Palace match. So the reality is he needs to pick up results quickly. And we have 3 matches in a row with the week break between them. So, well, minimum week break. There's over a week between a couple of them. So
no, you're right, Jack. No, I'm looking at it here.
So
you're dead right, Jack.
Yeah. So what, the Palace match is weekend as well, is it?
Well, so we play Fulham on the 1st, but then 5 days later we've got Crystal Palace. But then there's a 10-day gap between Palace and Liverpool, and then a 7-day gap between Liverpool and Forest.
There's Champions League on, I think, after the Liverpool match. Is there or before the Liverpool match?
Yeah, I think it's in March.
Yeah, that won't be in there yet because those games are still getting played. So I think it's
good point.
I think it's the next 3 we have 3 midweeks before them. So the reality is, as I said earlier, if we can pick up 7 points from those games, that's pretty much us out of trouble in my book, unless we basically lose every single game between then and May, basically, which, fingers crossed, even just through blind luck, we can pick up a couple of draws even if we don't win any. So I think these next 3 games, just go full throttle and try and get 3 results. And if you get 3 results, you're out of trouble, basically, and then you can worry about getting injuries. If 5 fellas get injured, getting us out of trouble, I consider that a worthwhile sacrifice. And we're safe in the Premier League, because at the end of the day, there's no point having a fully fit squad and everyone's in tears on the final day, being devastated we're going down to the Championship. I'm willing to risk getting a couple of extra injuries to try and pick up a few results. We're not looking to get 9-10 wins here. We're looking to get 3 or 4 wins and to stay in the Premier League. I think we should be well able to do that, even if we do pick up a few injuries along the way. Whereas with Frank, maybe you pick up a couple less, but I'm not too confident we get the results. So I just think the lack of Europe, and the reality is we could well get drawn against Galatasaray, who absolutely obliterated Juventus, or Atletico Madrid, who seemed to make light work of Bruges, who gave a lot of problems to good teams in Champions League this season. So we most likely will be out in the next round anyway. So that gives us a hell of a lot of free midweeks between now and the end of the season to prepare for games properly, leave everything out on the pitch in that 90 minutes, and you have 6-7 days to recover between games then. And you would hope then that would reduce the amount of injuries you're going to pick up, even if there's maybe a slight increase in the intensity we play with. So
and I think players coming back.
Yeah, basically. We have, I think after the international break, I think most of the lads, bar Madison and Kulusevski and Odebear, all seem to be back. Now, as Ange said last season, every time you think you see a light at the end of the tunnel, it's an oncoming train. So maybe we'll be having this conversation again in a month's time, saying, when May comes around, we'll have all the players back. But no, hopefully anyway, we'll have everyone
May
back.
2028.
Yeah, May 2020. Yeah, we're in League One.
Oh, jeez. That's the train. The League One train, where the players won't even be able to take the bus anymore. They'll have to take the train to the games.
Too good, Jack.
They have to pay it out of their own pocket.
Yeah, well, they almost deserve it at this stage. Just as a follow-up, Jack, just to push on to another question here. Do you have a preference of what formation he goes with? We were told that he's mostly a back 5, back 3 manager, but considering the players available being only around 12 or 13 senior fit players with any sort of experience, what is the best formation for maybe him to go with for at least the time being?
I think, to be honest, I back the 3 at the back from his point of view and a more general point of view. I think, Van de Ven is our only out and out centre back. I'm not considering Dragusin because I don't consider him a footballer. To be honest, for the weekend, I'd go Van de Ven, Paulinho, and Archie Gray in a back 3. Paulinho at the centre of it, let Archie Gray and Van de Ven playing those wider roles. You can possibly take the risk of playing someone like Sousa then. Whereas if you play a back 4, if you play Sousa, I don't want to see Sousa in a back 4. It's not really fair on the kid coming to the Premier League. Whereas if it's a back 5 with Van de Ven covering him, if he gets ripped to shreds by a winger, Van de Ven's coming in and sweeping up after him, knowing he has Paulinho and Gray covering behind him. So I think that just gives that extra layer of protection. While I think Sousa, we saw against United, he has a bit of something about him, even if he's maybe a bit of a rough diamond. He does have, I think he could have a few moments of quality. You could see him whipping a few nice crosses, and maybe Solanke and Kolo Muani are getting on the end of them. I think it allows you to play two up front, which I think just will benefit us massively, considering we have Kolo Muani, who's played under Tudor. So I think Rahul may be making a bit of a jump to say that maybe he'll actually be good now, but fingers crossed that Tudor can get something out of him. Solanke and Javi have been probably our two best players recently, so you get Javi playing in behind the two of them, and then you have Tell and Richarlison then also as options in that front too. I know Tell and Richarlison tend to play a lot better up top if they have players near them, and with the front two, that's just the reality of the situation, that you have a guy beside you and just makes your job a hell of a lot easier because you're not occupying two centre-backs by yourself, whereas like Richarlison struggles technically, Tell struggles kind of with the physicality dealing with defenders. That kind of takes that away if you partner them up with one of the other lads. And then just, I think Spence and Porro, Porro's someone you want to get high up the pitch and put across him. We saw how often Thomas Frank did it. It just allows him to do that without worrying what's going back behind him. So I just think the way the players we have available at this current moment, I think that sort of 3-4-1-2 you'd call it, with maybe Javi in behind the two up front, I think that probably is our best bet. Now the midfield, I think regardless of what formation you play, I think the midfield's an issue. So I just think getting the best out of everyone else other than those two midfielders is probably the best way to go. But I think someone like Paulinho, I think he's perfectly suited to being a centre-back. I can't believe that he's not been tried out there in his career before, because I just think he has all the attributes to do it, and it takes away from some of his deficiencies in possession because it's just much easier on the ball at centre-back. So the way we line up, I just think it makes much more sense to go with the back three, regardless of if Tudor is a back three manager. And listen, he knows a back three like the back of his hand. So we need him to come in here and hit the ground running. We don't want him trying out new ideas that maybe take 3 or 4 games for him to figure out. Whatever he thinks is going to get us results as quickly as possible, and we can all put our feet up, hopefully at the end of March, and say, oh, geez, that's a relief. Fair play to him. He got us off to a really good start there and got us out of trouble. That's all I care about. And I think the best way to do it is him sticking to what he knows and getting the best out of the players we have available. I think the back three is probably the best way to do that.
It's a fair point. Like in Colin, we've done that to managers in the past where we've brought in guys like Nuno and Frank, and then we expected them and more or less told them by taking the job they had to play back four, more aggressive style of play, more on the front foot, when that wasn't really ever what got them to where they were in their careers in the first place. So it kind of just never made sense to have them play in that type of shoes, or, you know, trying to put the wrong shoe on them in order to at least appease the fan base. It's probably smartest just to let Igor Tudor go with the back three or the back five, knowing that that's his tried and trusted manner of playing, even if maybe he doesn't have, let's say, a host of players to pick from.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't see him coming in and doing anything different, to be honest. Again, I think it was Sky Sports who'd flashed up that how many times he's played a back three and how many times he's played a back four. And I think he played it over 100 and something times with a back three, and he played it 3 times or whatever, a really small number, single digit, with a back four. But I actually think our squad, with the current squad available, suits a back three. Ideally, you'd like Christian Romero in there instead of Archie Gray. But he's athletic enough and smart enough as a footballer to go in there. The Paulinho comment I agree with. I think the only reason why Paulinho hasn't done centre-back is because centre-backs are usually a little streetwise, and they take a little bit longer to mature. So I think Paulinho probably would have been smashing people up and giving penalties away if he was a centre-back as a younger player. So he definitely shows his strength and attitude in a controlled fashion now because he's a little bit older, and I just think he's played outstanding in our back line. So I'd be very happy to have him in there and to have him in there for the rest of the season. I think the rest of the team, with the availability that's there, kind of picks itself, and I'll be fascinated to see if he can get a tune out of Kolo Muani up the front, because I know he's played with him before, managed him before. or at least I think he's managed them before,
Yeah.
if I've read
He had,
correctly.
he had a very good record with them last season.
Yeah, so
8 goals in 16 games in the league. Like, if we get anything close to that from him, we'd be flying.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it'd be interesting to see what that first formation will look like. And I think if it's lined up to have a go, like we've already touched on, I think Arsenal are there for the taking, and hopefully we should be a little bit fresher. Now, the only danger is that Arsenal, and again, speaking about Arsenal, because they're such a great team, they might come out like a bit of a wounded animal. So potentially we're going to have to negotiate that, because they might be, you know, the way it happens with some teams, they've just taken smashing after smash. I know they didn't get beat, but I don't know, they're not in a desperate situation. They're still 5 points clear, but they are a bit of a wounded animal. So they might come out all guns blazing, and we simply might not have the quality to deal with that at this moment in time, because it's just probably a little bit too early in Tudor's career, managing us to be able to cope with it. But let's see. I mean, I'm optimistic. I really am optimistic. But yeah, 3 at the back for me, for sure, with the squad that we have, and get some boys out wide and get Xavi pulling the strings, and hopefully Colin Mourani does something for us and we can score some goals. And is Richie back too? I think Richie's meant to be
back in
training. I don't know
if he'll make it or not. Yeah, but and get Solanke up there to, oh, please, somebody elbow Declan Rice in the nose, please. And
it might be just for that reason to come on for the last 5-10 minutes.
I don't really want to wish anybody ill, but like, he's such a fine player. You know, it's really annoying, and Smug too, because he knows it. And what a ball he put in for the Saka's goal yesterday. So that was you couldn't defend that. Jesus.
You really are sounding like Thomas Frank tonight.
Yeah. Have I not told you what a great team they are?
Keep them out of your mouth.
Yeah. I'm going on to an Arsenal podcast after this.
Jeez, sounds like it. Dave, we were just talking about the back 3, the back 5. Me personally, I think we should just go with whatever Tudor has been successful with, and that is the back 5, because I was saying to Colin there that we've done that to managers in the past, like Nuno and Frank, where we hired them, but then we sort of told them that, oh, we need you to play, though, like back 4 on the front foot type of play style. And that's never really what got them there in the first place. And then eventually you saw them start to go back towards the play style that originally they were using at other clubs, because, of course, in Nuno's case and Frank's case, they were under pressure. It just feels like we should just go with probably the back 5 for Tudor, because that's what he's been successful with, really.
Yeah, that's what I would like to go with. I'd like to just sort of implement it straight away. Now, I think, judging by what Tudor said in his press conference, Jack, or in his first interview, and you sort of pulled this up, he did say, you know, a quote to the sort of, you know, he's got to go with, basically put out what he can with what's available. And when you look at it, you know, we don't really have 3 proper centre-backs to be able to play 3 across the back right now. Like, you know, putting Byfield in there is a huge risk in a North London derby. I'd be more comfortable trying that against Fulham or even Crystal Palace at home. But North London derby, I mean, if the kid ends up costing you a goal inside the first 5-10 minutes, you've absolutely killed him, you know, before he even gets going. So I'm not comfortable taking that risk. I don't think it's the right game. But I would argue, I think you can play Paulini in there. I know I would prefer to get him back in that midfield, especially to get amongst the likes of Rice and people like that. However, I think he's good at right-sided centre-back, you know, in a back 3, as we've seen against Man City. You know, how many times did he step out and stop Semenyo at source, stop him from really having an influence at the game on the front foot defending? Compare that to Radu Dragsson on the upper side, who backed off against Shirky and allowed him to shoot, allowed him to score that goal. So for me, I'd be comfortable playing him in there. But hopefully this is one thing that Tudor has realised, looking at the last few games under Frank, since Radu Dragsson's return. You have to play him in the centre of the back 3. You can't play him either side. He gets lost, and he's not good enough in possession either to be able to move that ball forward, whereas João Paulinho and Van de Ven on the other side would be. So that would be my preferred back 3 if we were going to play like that. I just think it makes more sense to play Radu in the middle. He's more protected. That's like when he was playing at Genoa, he played in the middle of the back 3 again, a lot more protected. So for me, I think that would suit it better. But judging by what Tudor's saying, I think you might see a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, I think it probably will still be a back. I think what Jack was touching on earlier was probably could be some version of Paulinho, Van de Ven, and neither Dragishin or Archie Gray in the back line. But I'm in agreement with Jack there that don't necessarily see Dragic as a footballer sometimes. He just seems more like a hair model than really an actual footballer in the back line. I'd rather it actually
America's
be
top model next year.
Yeah, hopefully Igor Tudor brought a pair of scissors or clippers with him, and maybe all of a sudden we'll see a whole new defender if he takes that bun off. But let's go to Paul Brown's super chat here, take some other people that are in the house with us, and then we're going to push on to a certain Christian Romero, who we know Gary Neville has a lot of love for, he said with heavy sarcasm. With the premise of Arsenal, they are there for the taking. Sunday has to be electric, gladiatorial almost, great word, cannot show respect to them from Deleuze, or maybe it means from a delusional Spurs fan. Big up to you, Paul Brown. Really appreciate you, man. I mean, this is the thing, Dave, is that I think with the appointment and with the situation that Arsenal already are now finding themselves in, they're starting to show the cracks that we kind of all knew at some point would appear. It's a great opportunity for this fan base to come together, be re-energized, rejuvenated under the prospect of a new manager, but also with the fact that Arsenal now are going into this game maybe less confident than they would have.
Well, they're ropey, they're shaky, you know, they're I think they're losing their confidence in terms of the Premier League right now. You could see that last night, you seen that sort of against Man United. And I just think walking into a North London derby away from home, I think you sit off them, you allow them to get comfortable. You know they're going to play for set pieces. They'll probably end up scoring one or two of them. And then all of a sudden they come out here with a victory, and you give them that sort of confidence boost they sort of need then to see out the rest of the campaign, you know, settle the nerves a little bit. For me, I think there's a golden opportunity here to really slap them in the mouth. You know, they've had long enough over the last this season to sort of laugh at us. You go back to the first North London derby, we sat off them, we paid them so much respect. We practically played 11 across the back, and they didn't use their set pieces like everyone thought they would. They didn't score from one. They scored 4 goals from open play. You know, and I don't think the Eze who comment actually helped before that. I think it almost writ the script to a certain degree when Thomas Frank made that comment. I hope Tudor doesn't do any of that this press conference, just sort of, you know, give off good messaging to the Spurs fan base, slight dig at Arteta, and that'll be perfect. But for me, you got to go after them. You've got to press them into mistakes. You know, they're going to be rattled. They're going to be nervy after that Wolves one. They imploded at the end of the game as well. You could see that. They are a team right now that their confidence is shaky. And I think we've just got to go and batter the door down. I think we've got to blow them over, go and press them. Couple of early mistakes. Like you look last night, mix up between a player and a goalkeeper, again against Man United, which shows if you put the press on them, they will give you an opportunity. You will score a goal off the back of it. So for me, that's the way we go after them in the first 45 minutes, at least anyway. Go for them, go for the throat, let them know they're in a real game and really test their confidence. It's what we should have done to Burnley and teams like that, you know, when we had them coming up. Go after them. We refuse to do so. For me, now is the time. Arteta is already doing strange things. You know, against Man United, he had them training on the Emirates the night beforehand, which almost only magnifies the occasion to them, which almost only magnifies the nerves, the over-thought process. And to be honest with you, I do think the Arsenal squad is good, but their manager is where the weak link is. And for me, go after them. He'll end up instructing them to sit back, not concede. And then that way we'll be on top of the game. And then hopefully we can take our rewards.
Yeah, the light bulb that he loves to use in the
There is
dressing room.
Tudor, Jack. There is Tudor right now. Come on.
Yeah, the light bulb that Arteta loves is flickering at the minute by the looks of things, Paul. Big up. We have to absolutely need to take advantage of it. Thank you for the kind support, by the way, Paul. Do a good, really appreciate it. Razzers, thank you for the kind comment as well, saying, come on, you boys in green. Ian Ferguson's in the house. Always good to see you, Ian. Trinidad saying, we just need to treat every game now like a Champions League final, pretty much, to be honest. If anything, we need to be prioritizing these Premier League games, unfortunately.
A Europa League final.
Yeah, there you go. That's the right mentality. And then Sean Maddox is probably right by saying this. Playing passively has nearly relegated us this season. And then Dropkick Your Teacher has become a member. Do appreciate your support.
Very, very
Artist T. Now, we're going to be talking about Christian Romero. Gary Neville, who we know is a big lover of Christian Romero, like I said, with heavy sarcasm. He asked Ange Postecoglou about him in the overlap interview, with Ange saying that Spurs would not have won that Europa League final without Christian Romero. He described him as a Roy Keane type character where people at the club fear and respect him at the same time. Considering Ange's words on Romero, Dave, would you still consider selling him this summer?
Nope, never even considered it in my lifetime. You know, I really love Christian Romero. I think he's a good asset to have. I didn't really need Ange Postecoglou to confirm that everyone was shit scared of him. I've been saying it for a long time with Romero. I actually really picked up on it more so when James Maddison put out one of his vlogs pre-season, and they were doing head tennis off the tables in the dressing room, and then Romero was nearly headbutting the table. He was stooping that low to win the game. And when you see that in the dressing room environment, I can only imagine what it's like on the training pitch. And then when you see how competitive he can be on a football pitch, it's no surprise to me. I think every good club needs a leader like that. However, where I do think he needs to buck up his ideas is if you're the club captain, you can't be turning up late after losing 4-1, to your biggest rivals. You can't turn up to training late the following day, which he did. There is certain things that he needs to realize, the sort of respect and the fear that he has within the club, and actually use that to his advantage to sort of drag everybody forward to his way of thinking, his sort of standards that he sets. Also, some of the red cards on the pitch, especially this season. Now, I wonder how much of that is sort of out of frustration underneath Thomas Frank. I was that sort of player as well. If a manager has you sitting in all the time and you're sort of starting to blow your top and lose your point with it, you sort of then do end up being a bit more rash or making a silly challenge on the football pitch. And I think that is an area where Romero needs to rein it in a little, be a little bit more calculated. But on the same breath, I do think every pundit and everyone else is looking to get the guy sent off at times. There's challenges where he gets sent off. You could see happen 5 times over the rest of the Premier League. It's not looked at. It's not even a booking and stuff like that. So for me, I do think he gets a bit of a raw deal at times. But I would urge any Spurs fan that wants to go down the route of selling him. Everyone thought selling Harry Kane. Well, not everyone. I won't glass it up as everyone. But at the time when I was out here saying we shouldn't, everyone was telling me how much of a great idea it was to cash in on it and reinvest. Look how that's worked out. I remember saying at the time, be careful what you wish for. You sell your club's top goal scorer like that, you're heading towards relegation. It's a big chunk of goals to be missing. And I think selling someone like Romero across the back line, you think it's bad now, we're going to end up conceding a hell of a lot more once he's gone. His aggression, I've seen it live in the stadium against West Ham. I remember then coming home watching the game against Newcastle. Against West Ham, he hit can't remember he hit, was it Mikel Antonio straight away? Mikel Antonio spent the rest of the game over the other side of the pitch. Didn't want to know, and then you look at against Newcastle, St. Maximum, everyone fearing the great St. Maximum, Mr. Gucci, one step over, Romero clears him, takes him out of the game. For me, you need a player like that in this team. You need that combative spirit combined with also how good he is in possession is very rare. I think the aggression that Romero has is lost in modern day centre backs. And I'm not being funny, but if Ramos and Pepe was good enough for Real Madrid, Romero is certainly good enough for me, let alone the amount of goals he scores up the other end. Like, people continuously question his commitment. Some of his goals kept Thomas Frank in the job for as long as it did. So for me, I don't even want to entertain the notion of selling them. If the boys want to give their opinion on that and maybe lean that way, that's absolutely fine. However, just know I already disagree with it. I really like Cristian Romero. And for me, he's a player that we need to keep and build around. We are never going to win consistently or even compete consistently unless you keep your best players and build around them. That's something we've done under Pochettino. We were able to keep our best players. We didn't sell them on, and that's why we were able to be competitive every single season. And for me, this is what we need to do again, moving forward. Keep your best players and try and build around it a bit more than maybe what you did under Pochettino. And you should see the fruits of it. I don't think it's a difficult concept to understand. The better players you have on the pitch, the more competitive you're going to be.
Colin or Jack, any view of the Romero persuasion of selling him?
Yeah, we should sell him to Arsenal.
Now you're getting banned.
I agree with most of what David said there. I don't think we should sell him. I think people who say sell him are potentially confusing the captaincy and the example he should give. So I'm not for selling him, but at the same time, I actually don't think he's a great captain. Like, being late, daft tackles, I'll get back to the Manchester United one now in a minute, aren't a great example for young players. It just simply isn't. What is a good example is him clattering into people like Mikel Antonio and showing the guys not to be afraid or pay too much respect to the opposition. I'm all for it, but tardiness turning up to training is not what you want to have at a top six club. I don't know. It's hard to put into words how frustrating it feels when you hear that, when you consider. And I know money really shouldn't come into it, but they're only, what are they training for? 2 to 4 hours a day. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I work 10-hour days most of the time, like, and I'm not late for work. So I do find that element of frustrating. The other thing that Dave brought up was the daft tackles. I'll die on this hill. That was never a red against Manchester United. That was never a red. I just don't see how it was a red. And you know, to me, it's Fernandez and Christian Romero's reputation that get him sent off there. I mean, his eyes were on the ball. Yes, it was very aggressive. Yes, he was pissed off he'd had too much of a touch. And yes, it might have been a touch reckless. But you've seen far greater tackles go in and get a yellow or nothing at all. And he gets sent off straight away. And I wish I'd run around the bloody corner to Paddy Power and put a few quid on it. Because once I saw Michael Oliver, who I'm convinced was the referee for that match, or somebody I don't like anyway, I was absolutely full sure Christian Romero was going to get sent off. I was full sure, and I wish I'd listened to my gut and gone around and put a few quid on it. But yeah, so I think I'm not for selling him. I think he's an asset to the club, but he would need to shape up and lead through mature leadership rather than allowing this temperament to boil over where he's late for training, where he makes a daft tackle and gives a referee an opportunity to send him off. Just those little elements, if you can just refine them, yeah, then great. But, you know, selling him, that's nonsense.
Ludicrous.
Absolute nonsense.
Ludicrous. One thing I just want to point out before we get the two Jacks in on this is where I sort of fall off the wagon here a little bit. You know, I don't drink, but sometimes some of this drives me to it at times. You look at James M here. Remember, Radu was out for 12 months. Give him some time. Andrew's system was never going to suit him. But what he's done since his return was very similar to what happened under Ange Postecoglou, and he was playing much deeper under Thomas Frank. And he had to run a 20-odd games under Ange. I just don't think he's that good. But in the same breath, then he goes, Romero creates chaos at the back, similar to Vicario. I mean, this is where I just sort of absolutely fall off the wagon. I mean, it's like we're defending Radu Dragosin, and look at the defending he done against Man City. By the way, he's involved in both goals, because the second one he ended up kicking the ball straight down the middle, even though he's out of position. But then we're going to absolutely rip Romero apart. I mean, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
I agree with you, and I'm on your side, on your team, but at the same time I can understand where he's coming from, because as it depends on how you remember the context. You know, Romero is heroic because he goes up front and he scores a goal and keeps Frank in a job, but at the same time he goes missing from time to time or does something daft and leaves us open and we concede goals. I always remember that one against Newcastle last season, I think it was, where he just runs out and he leaves that guy free. So I mean, he does contribute to goals at both ends of the pitch. But on balance, your question or the contention was, do you sell him? No, of course you don't fucking sell him. But I do think it is a perspective thing. If you remember the bad things more strongly than you remember the good things, which I think I remember more the good things about him than I do the negative things. But if you were to put the other hat on, he does do a lot of daft things where he concedes goals or causes us to concede goals.
Like he's not perfect, right? There's an element where he needs to brush up on things. But Real Madrid fans didn't have concern about Pepe all the time. They just understood it's an asset to have on the football pitch. Yeah, but it's an asset to have on the football pitch. Yes. Someone that people don't want to dribble at, someone that people are afraid to go near. Like every footballer makes mistakes, but I think someone like Romero's gets highlighted a lot more than what someone like Radu Dragosin or some of the weaker members of the squad do. I'd almost feel like they get a free pass. The fact that Ben Davies is still here and we sold Harry Kane and moved him on is absolutely insanity in terms of contribution and stuff like that on the football pitch. And we're going to end up making the same mistake with Romero and Radu Dragosin if people keep having this attitude towards the weaker member of the squads. I get we're underdogs, but at some point we have to change our mentality and realize what it takes to be able to go and win games and compete consistently. And that's by keeping your best players and having competitive players on the football pitch. And I think when it comes to Romero, a lot of people just like to criticize him just because. Now, I get people maybe put a little bit of a different standard on him, but he's had way more good games for Tottenham Hotspur than he has had bad games and stuff like that. And, you know, for me, I would take that on the football pitch every day of the week. So that's where I sort of just, I don't really understand the logic or that behind it. I'm not having a go at James. I just don't understand how you can say in one breath, give him time, but then in another breath, just, Romero causes chaos and stuff like that. You know, I just don't understand it. You lose me in that regard. But also, I think where Romero becomes invaluable the likes of the Europa League final. We didn't need Ange Postecoglou to tell us how invaluable he was. You know, he took the Tottenham team down in United End to have the team talk in front of the Spurs fans. I don't think Harry Kane would have done that as a captain. I'd gone and disrespected the team like that. You look at him taking Maguire out of the game for the last sort of 5-10 minutes, knowing that maybe, if they can get him forward in a set piece, he's in there, he's in Maguire's ear, constantly getting in his head as club captain and stuff like that. On the biggest stage, the guy has turned up and hasn't let Tottenham Hotspur down in that regard. So for me, people sit here and praise Brennan Johnson. People still question whether he actually got that final touch. But outside of that, what did he contribute in the Europa League final? He's gone to Palace, and I still hear Johnson, ole, fucking ole. Romero had a much bigger impact in that final in terms of trying to help keep the clean sheet. Same with Mickey van der Ven, but we don't sit here and sing about them. What are we doing here as a football club?
I think we should be showing more praise for Pop Montasari, to be honest, for that goal, but that's just me. Jack, anything to add to Christian Romero and Gary Neville? Of course, maybe trying to get a different answer out of Ange, but Ange didn't bite. He seemed to show a lot of praise for the guy.
I thought both the lads made very good points, and I'm very much in the same boat as them. I think you keep hold of your best players. Romero and Van de Ven, I think, are quite clearly our two best players, and the reality is with Romero, you have to take the good with the bad, because as we saw with a lot of players, like Roy Keane sitting right beside him, how many times did Roy Keane get sent off stupidly during his career? And if you were to ask any Irish person that's into football who they would think of when they think of great captains, I guarantee you more often than not people would say Roy Keane, despite the fact he was probably a far dirtier player than Romero. Like that tackle on Alfie Haaland, there was absolutely no need for him to do that.
EVH.
Yeah, like if Romero did something like that, I can only imagine Gary Neville's reaction.
That ends in a court case in today's world, I'm telling you that.
But also,
Gary Neville petitioned him be banned from football. Gary Neville.
Yeah.
Look at the amount of times that he protected some of the less aggressive members in that United squad on the football pitch, in the tunnels and stuff.
Yeah. But I just think it's the reality. Someone like Romero, you have to take the good with the bad. I remember Pochettino talking about Dele Alli. He said in a press conference that he saw, I think he used the word naughtiness. He said he saw naughtiness come back into him, and it made him excited because he said his performance levels had dropped. And he said as soon as he saw that come back in, he was like, he has that bit of edge about him. And I think that was the season he scored 19 goals in the league. So I think guys like that, if you try and take that out of their game, it probably actually does far more harm than good. And I have a feeling Thomas Frank maybe push back against him. I know Ange said in the interview today, basically, if someone said to him, "Oh, you need to tell Romero to calm down," he said, "No, you do it." So like,
I'm not going over there.
So I'd imagine Frank has probably gone, "Christian, you need to calm down." And he's like, "Who are you telling him to calm down?" And even on that, I completely agree with Dave's point. Turning up late for training the day after North London Derby is totally unacceptable, especially when you lose. If we had won, fair enough. If he's out in the beers, he could not show up for training if he wants. But to lose game. But at the same time, I'm wondering if he nearly did that to make a point to Frank that he wasn't respected in the change room.
100%.
So I saw a thing now, obviously Twitter rumors, you can never know if they're true or not. Apparently the week before, Frank had questioned Romero's leadership abilities behind the scenes. So perhaps that was Romero's way of saying, I don't respect you, you don't respect me, we're not pals, basically. Now, maybe he was just late, and regardless of the reason for it, it is unacceptable. I think there was probably more to it than meets the eye, but I think if we were a bit better as well, he just wouldn't be getting those red cards. I think a lot of it just comes down to frustration. That United game, I saw some people saying we were playing well. We just weren't getting opened up. We weren't doing that well. I thought we were okay. We were still fairly passive, and I think you just get fed up.
Remember where we were, Jack? We were just afraid of losing. So once we were holding a team, we were delighted.
Like Roy Keane also famously said, sometimes I just kick someone to make myself feel better. I think Romero that ill.
Yeah, like you saw Romero, he won the ball back, took about 4 or 5 touches, looked up, there was no one there, and then in a split second he sees was a Casemiro come out of nowhere, and he panics and goes through him. Now, I disagree with Colin. I think it was a red card, but at the same time, I saw that ref cam that they released. How Michael Oliver has seen that as a red card in the ref cam is beyond me. It was actually the angle from behind Romero, where I was like, okay, that's a red card. It was high up on his shin, but Michael Oliver could not have been quicker to get that red card out of his pocket.
Yeah.
I don't see how it.
And also the fact that Michael Oliver seemed to let 3 fouls on Romero go before that. Like, that's the part that's also frustrating. Romero literally was having his shirt pulled and then also was falling to the ground afterwards. Anyways, he was almost in a sense kind of collecting himself and then happened to unluckily stamp on top of the likes of Casemiro. But of course, in typical Michael Oliver fashion, ignores all of that until Romero makes that challenge.
It was definitely naughty. And he's definitely left a little bit of sauce on it. There's no doubt. But like, by the measurement of the law that I understand it, and I'm very happy to be corrected, it wasn't out of control. He wasn't off the ground. It wasn't studs up. And from memory, he won the ball, or he got some of the ball. So I don't know how it qualifies to be a red so fast. That's what pisses me off about that.
I agree with
that. And you see that day in, day out from other players and get away with it.
But this is where Spurs don't help themselves, though. They have to come out and start protecting their managers and their players when it comes to refereeing decisions.
They should have surrounded the referee. Again, in my I mean, I don't condone that either. I wish it was a bit more like rugby. There was a bit more self-control and referees were in charge of the game and we could all enjoy it and get on with it. I hate all the namby-pamby whinging. But like, just look at the venom that's in Fernandez's face when he's facing Michael Oliver when that challenge goes in. But like, how does that obviously, Michael Oliver is just a human being. Like, at the end of the day. And yes, he's refereeing a Premier League match. But like, you know, the ref cam that I was watching, Fernandez is nearly down his throat. And yet he's having a laugh with our lads, you know, having a laugh with Gallagher. You know, and you're just thinking, where's the aggression? And I don't like Fernandez either. But like, where's the aggression from our guys when there's a decision that goes against or should go in our favor or whatever? We're just so ineffective at that. It's just unbelievable. All the dark arts, as you might like to
I think that's set by the club, though, isn't it? You know, I think, you know, like Romero's previous red card before that, didn't he get fouled at one end and then he you know, he ended up taking it out up the other end again, you know? And I think what you're seeing is, you know, players that are starting to get frustrated on the football pitch and making more rasher challenges because that's what's being allowed on them. You know, and as soon as they do it, then all of a sudden they're being booked, they're being yellow carded, they're being red carded. And I do think some of that comes down to the club. You look at Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. Why were they so great? And why did they get a lot of the decisions that went their way that weren't involving VAR and stuff like that? Because of the scrutiny on them already heading into the game by the football club in terms of every decision they're going to make. Sir Alex Ferguson was absolutely famous for it, you know, for his time at Man United. Same with Jose Mourinho at Chelsea. You know, Nottingham Forest the season before, this season, they questioned the referees, brought in Mark Clattenburg, put more scrutiny on them. They finished 7th. Look where they are this season now. You know what I mean? So I think there is an added benefit to our club actually coming out and starting to protect some of our players and starting to put a lot of these decisions under the microscope. You go back to the Premier League, we're one of the only clubs that don't do it. That's manager doesn't even come out, players don't. And I think that comes from within the club.
I agree, because you should feel like you're already defeated when you go to challenge Tottenham Hotspur. And they feel like they've won before they challenge us. That's exactly why the likes of Klopp and Ferguson, because any of these governing bodies were already on the back foot. So they just, what's the point in going and arguing with them? We'll just let it go. I've no doubt about that. I've seen it in my own professional life. People are defeated before they walk in the door to a meeting. So, you know, the club doesn't have that aura about it. The club has the aura of, that's fine.
We're pushovers.
The club should have an aura of, we're here and we're serious, and if you come to challenge us, you're going to have a headache.
Yeah, totally
we don't have that.
Paul Van Ben
saying, harmless potato, it wasn't a red.
I just want to say one more thing around Romero. Sorry, quickly is I think a lot of people that maybe are anti-Romero, or not anti-Romero, maybe that's a bit strong, but people that maybe question Romero, I think they think his rashness and all come out of a place of badness or a place of I don't care. I actually think when you look at someone like Roy Keane, it actually comes down to wanting to win so bad at times. And I think that's where some of it comes from. I think he's a natural born winner. He's got a taste of a World Cup. He wants more before he retires. You know, you look at the dressing room he sees in with all these Argentinian players at top clubs. The cabinets are all full, you know. And I think
that's why Harry Kane left.
Exactly. That's why Harry Kane left. It's why Luka Modric left. It's why Gareth Bale left. You know, it's why all of our best players have left in pursuit of Michael Carrick. It's Berbatov. They have all left in pursuit of more silverware, regular silverware. And I think that's where Romero, sometimes the reckless nature or the reckless nature on the pitch comes from. It's actually by a standard of just wanting to win, you know. And I think it gets overshadowed and overlooked where people go, "Oh, that's just Romero being ridiculous again." And it's like, come on, what are we doing here? I do think it comes from a place of just wanting to win so bad.
He does have some silverware from last year. Sorry, Jack. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I don't know whether that's, you should excuse him from doing some of this stuff because he already has some silverware. I'd say it's probably because he has silverware, was looking forward to building on that and driving on for more. And we have comprehensively ruined any momentum we had. And that's where I'd say a lot of his frustrations come from, because he wanted that. He's had a taste of it with Argentina, and he had a taste of it with Tottenham. And he wants more and more and more because he is a winner. He is a warrior. And it's going nowhere.
Yeah, petulance, even though it's probably being kind, can be described as almost caring at times, where it is like the reason you put in maybe an aggressive or a petulant challenge is just because, you know, you have that competitive edge towards you that you, like Dave said, you don't enjoy losing, and that you almost sort of let out that frustration in a manner. Of course, it also can be seen as a bit careless and thoughtless, but there are definitely ways of looking at it. It's not maybe just always negative, maybe a way to portray it. Paul Van been saying Tudor is interim royalty. He's absolutely got this. Like to see that positive enthusiasm, Paul. Good to see stateside footy as well.
Sorry, Jack, can I just jump in with one last point just before we move on from the Romero thing? Just I thought Colin raised a very good example, and I'm actually going to disagree with them on it. Just the Romero thing against Newcastle last season where he stepped out of defence. I remembered the exact goal because I remember debating it with people who said what you said, and I do understand exactly what you mean. He stepped out of defence. I think it was a corner came in. The corner got cleared, and everyone just kind of was very passive. And as anyone that played Sunday League, has ever played Sunday League knows, the keeper is always screaming at you, get out, get out, get out, to try and relieve the pressure. Romero was the one leading the press, and Basuma actually dropped back into centre-back. And I'm sure from a coaching point of view, Ange said to the other players, the other 10 players that are going to be on, the other 9 outfield players, Romero at times is going to step out of position. I need one of those midfield 3 to drop in and cover him in those situations. And that's just, as a manager, you have to kind of cover for guys doing that, because at the end of the day, he's going to step out, and that's such a good part of his game. So many times we've seen him win the ball high up the pitch. Against Arsenal there a couple of years ago, he won the ball off the goalkeeper. Like, you don't get those moments without the Newcastle moments. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. You can't say, oh, well, we want him to do it when it works, but we don't want him to do it when it doesn't. But that's just speaking in hindsight. And I think there was cover back there. It wasn't that he went completely against the coach's instructions. I remember Basuma dropped back into the back 4, and we conceded then. It's like, well, Romero's out of position. But it's like, but there was coverage in there. He's given license to do this. It's the same as Ronaldo and Messi when they were playing. They didn't have to do the running that other guys had to do because they were so good. Romero doesn't. He gets extra license to do things on instinct because he's so good at what he does. And the reality is, if other players had that attitude as well, he probably wouldn't have to step out in that moment. Other guys would have been doing it, maybe one of the wingers or one of the strikers or one of the midfielders. But the reality is, it was Romero doing it. And Romero's that guy showing that leadership to do it and to have that intensity about his game. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad once again.
Yeah, I think he sometimes does feel like he just has to take it into his own hands. Thank you, Paul, for the support, by the way. Steve, also as well, good luck on your...
enjoy.
Hopefully you enjoy every bit of London and also do get to enjoy the North London Derby. I know Jack is going, so in case you do see him there, feel free to say hello. Big up to you, Steve.
By the
Have
way,
a wonderful time, by the way.
Have plenty of money for the club shop, because when you walk in there for the first time, you want a bit of everything going on in there. So, plenty of money, my man.
Choose carefully. Thank you for the super sticker as well, Dermotron. He's getting fighting ready by looks of the super sticker for the North London Derby. Thank you so much, Dermotron. Appreciate your support, sir. Good to have you with us and listening. He's also wishing Stevie a safe flight. Big up to Dermotron. And we're going to finish off with this. I'm actually glad that Jack was doing my job for me and noticed this right before we went live. Apparently, Spurs could be losing a very big sponsor, one that's a long-term sponsor for them at the end of the season. My guess, just my guess, would be that it might be the AIA sponsor. But this is what Matt Law of the Daily Telegraph had to say. A 17th place finish in the league was deemed unacceptable for the reasons why the sponsor might walk at the end of this season. The club have failed to present a clear roadmap or reassurance of how they fail or how they plan to improve domestic performances and results. An inability to sign the best players. Clients have been left unimpressed by the number of empty seats inside the Tottenham Stadium for big games. And then also as well, the anger by the fans, and also many sponsors have been dismayed by the lack of communication from the very top of the club since Levy's departure, with many yet to be introduced to Vinay and the Lewis family. Jack, any thoughts on just this astounding bit of news right before North London Derby?
I just can't believe that. Well, to be honest, like I can and I can't believe it. These guys, I cannot begin to fathom how incompetent they are. I go to work every day. I work in a company with, I think we have 250 employees. This sort of thing would never in a million years happen. Everything is about looking after the people that give you money.
Yeah.
Like, this is just such a basic aspect of business. And this trends along the same lines of the stuff with the supporters trust, where they left stuff out of the minutes, where they asked where the club is going, how the club is going to get out of this slump, the league performances for the last 2 years, and they just cut it out. Like,
yeah,
it's like they want to bury their head in the sand instead of actually fixing the problem. Obviously, football fans are impatient, but if you could see some sort of plan and they showed some initiative, people would have a bit more patience. But it's like as if these guys are like fellas on 30 grand a year that are going, oh, well, you know what, someone else will fix this problem. These guys are paid very, very good money to be in very senior positions in a company that's worth 3 or 4 billion. Like, that is an enormous business. And it just seems like they're run like a company that has 4 or 5 employees and it's just looking to get by. I can't fathom how badly they're run. Now, Matt Law, at the same time, he's Dr. Doom. He loves putting negative stories out there because it's good for him. It gets everyone talking. But I do believe this at the same time, and I'm sure it will come out in the coming days and weeks who it is. I think you said AIA, but I think we have a new contract with them till 2032 for the training
maybe
year.
I'm wrong. Yeah.
So I think that's all signed and everything. I don't know who it will be, but like, regardless of who it is, it's just not a good look. Just having communication for guys that give you millions of pounds every single year. Like, how much difficulty would it cost for Vinay to go in, have a cup of tea and a few sandwiches with these lads and say, nice to meet you? Like, it's not rocket science. Just keep those relationships going. I personally, for all the issues I have with Vinay and how he's run the club, I thought this was the sort of thing he was supposed to be good at. And for all the flaws that Levy and actually Donna Cullen had, they never would have made a mistake like this. They knew who's asked to kiss to get those millions rolling in, whereas clearly these guys don't. At the end of the day, these sorts of things are important. And like, you could be talking the difference between tens of millions. That's a sign. That's like a decent signing every couple of years, basically, you're giving up.
Right.
Because you've not been willing to kiss a sponsor's ass. I don't understand how something like this can happen. And the 17th place finish, the domestic performance is not. I don't buy that stuff about not signing the best players. Like, we've signed Javi Simmons, Kudus, who else we signed? Some are Colin Wani, Paulinho, Conor Gallagher. Like, that's 5 fairly significant names. I don't really buy that they're not buying the best players. It's maybe saying after you buy them, it's retrospectively turned out that they're maybe not performing to the level you expect. But
it's probably those last 2 points right there. Those last 2 bullet points, they're really the most damning, right?
Yeah. It's like the empty seats is a bad look, and obviously they're worried about us getting relegated potentially. Because even if we don't go down this year, maybe we don't go down next year. If we keep trending along this way, eventually it will happen. Like, it's just law of averages. Same as if Arsenal keep competing at that end of the table. Eventually, they're going to look their way into winning the Premier League, even if they don't have the minerals to do it. You cannot flirt with this sort of thing for too long, or it will come back to bite you. And I just think we're just totally rudderless at the moment. And I think it does look like the Lewis family nearly. I've gone back and forth on my views on them by the week. It's like as if they don't care, because I don't know how they wouldn't be making sure stuff like this is happening. I understand they might not be involved in the day-to-day running, but making sure sponsors are being looked after, that's just such a basic part of business.
This goes to what you and I were, I think, discussing at the back end when we, went off air. we were discussing, just it is actually amazing how incompetent they seem to look in terms of the company side of things. Just, I know running a sports franchise can be a bit more complicated than maybe running a company, but damn, do they make it look difficult, or, you know, in the cases of Spurs, like it's some of the basics that they just seem to be getting so wrong. Then Johan Lange, so many people at the club. I think you and I were having this exact conversation just a week ago, and it is amazing that this article has now come out, of course, the following week. You know, I don't like being proven right about stuff like this, but it, you know, it is frustrating.
That's nothing to do with sport, though. That's off the pitch stuff. That's stuff every business has to deal with. Like, that's just, it's not even complex stuff. It's so straightforward. Like, I just don't understand. It's not, that has nothing to do with us being a football club. That's just basic running of a business.
Well, it's just to me, it reads a bit like negotiation tactics. You know, it's a bit like if you went into your own employer and said, I want a pay rise. Well, what are you going to give me in return for it? Is the first question. So if you've got a product that was, you know, A tier and now it's B tier or even C tier or potentially championship tier, the strength of your negotiation changes. So it just could be mood music from, you know, current sponsors saying, well, this isn't what we signed up for, and they're right to raise that and to complain about it. And potential sponsors saying, well, you know, when we started the negotiation, you were an awesome team and now you're a less awesome team. What I will say is that you'd never see Arsenal make this mistake.
No.
That's my last Arsenal joke of the night that nobody got.
I got so used to it at this point. It's almost
I'm going to give up now. That's just my audience is failing. I'm just going to give up.
Colin in the away end now on Saturday.
I'll be throwing toppers at him.
If you never say tie with all the gear, they'd be like, who's this other guy wearing all the merch?
You might have an Arsenal cup.
Just my quick observation on it all. I think, you know, when you look at everything that's going on, you know, you see that sort of with companies in liquidation. You know, I'm not saying Tottenham are in liquidation before anyone starts, but like, you know, not wanting to address certain questions, you know, not really caring about, you know, whether sponsorships are unhappy and stuff like that. I think when you look at what's gone on this season, you look at the 2 loans in the summer, not much commitment in the January transfer window, you know, don't really care about appeasing their sponsors long term, you know, hiding minutes and stuff like that. You know, I just think it stinks of owners that are actually going to sell up this summer, looking to get out, to be honest with you. You know, they don't seem to be committing to anything long term right now. And for me, they're guys that want out. I think they've tried to take over the football club, realized maybe it's not as easy as maybe Daniel Levy has made it look in years gone by in terms of all aspects, or at least getting some of it right. And I think they're looking at it and going, do you know what? This is far too big for us. We're all old enough. We don't want this noise. We don't want this criticism. And I think they're looking to sell in the summer. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of what we're seeing. I think that's partly why Vinay and Johan Lange are still in the job. I think, you know, they're just going to keep people here until they get to sell, then they can get out and wash their hands with it. Let someone else deal with all the problems.
I'm sure Daniel Levy is laughing down a glass of Chateau Neuf de Pape at the moment at the mess the club is in.
Yeah. He might not, though. He still owns 25%. But I'd say he's watching his.
He's waiting for his billion.
He's probably trying to take back that bottle that he gave Vinay. You know, when he exchanged. He's
you're
thinking,
right.
wait a minute, what have I done here? Hired him more for his wine taste than his taste in running a football club. Thank you for the support, by the way, Matt. Really do appreciate it, and we'll try our very best, of course, this Sunday under, of course, new tenure of Igor Tudor. Looking forward to it. Thank you for the extra support. Thanks to everybody that's been in here with us. We're just going to wrap up here with some of these questions from the members, and we'll get on out of here. Do smash the like button, please, if you haven't done so already. Just helps push this out to more and more people. Excluding Basuma, who do you think will struggle under Igor Tudor, says Sean Maddox. Maybe I'll throw this one at you, Jack. Anyone that you think might struggle under Igor Tudor?
That is a really, really good question, I have to say. I haven't thought about it. Sorry?
Don't boost his ego anymore. He doesn't need it.
Yeah. I genuinely, I don't know. I'm hoping everyone improves under him, including Basuma, to be honest. I think Basuma, if you can just get him in line and just maybe get him to stop doing mental stuff the whole time, I think he maybe could
might
be
have to get him to
70
move in with him at that point, Jack.
Yeah, it'd be like in Ndombele and Mourinho going running in the park.
Yeah. And then he also says, Colin, what player do you think will show the biggest improvement under Igor Tudor? I hope it's Xavi Simons, to be honest, Colin, because that's who we really need to show
yeah,
up.
that's what I was going to go for. I thought it was nailed on to be Colo.
Yeah,
I would love, because I have a lot of time for Xavi. He's my type of player. So if he was able to take it on another notch, that'd be great, and I think it'd be advantageous for the team. But I think if you could get, because Xavi's already at a level where I think he is contributing, particularly in Europe, if we could get Kolo Muani firing too, that would be great. So I think he's got the biggest potential for improvement under Tudor.
Okay. And Dropkick Your Teacher saying, how do you think we'll react given our injuries? Because surely they'll smell blood in the water. I think we've more or less answered that. I think they are going to go for a back five just because that's been his tried and trusted artist team. Then he says, how many wins do you see us picking up until the end of the season? Dave, you had this question down. We just didn't have time for it. Any optimism that we'll pick up enough wins? Because I know Artist T is always thinking about us getting relegated. It's his wet dream sometimes.
Yeah, he's constantly, speaking about it. You keep speaking about it. Sometimes these things you speak it into existence. So actually, I think you need to start hoping we stay up to a certain degree. But when you look at Tottenham's fixtures, I think the North London derby, although we want to be competitive, we want to win the game. It's a tough ask, right? They're top of the league. But I'm looking at the likes of Fulham, Palace. I think you can definitely pick up 2 wins there. Nottingham Forest, Sunderland, Brighton, Wolves. Then after that, Liverpool game. Then Leeds and Everton towards the end of the season. So I think there's more than enough games there for Tottenham to be able to pick up points and drag ourselves from safety, playing the right way. I think under Frank, I would have said, well, we're going to respect every single one of them, sit off every single one of them. And I didn't know where the next win was coming from. And when you look at the remaining fixtures, I think the only team we beat out of all of them under Frank was Crystal Palace. So, I think under Tudor now, I believe outside of Chelsea, Liverpool, maybe Aston Villa and the Arsenal game, I think every single one of them is winnable.
Then he says, do you think Poch will help us attract players this summer, despite us being very likely to finish bottom half again? Hard to say, but what I will add is that if we manage to keep a lot of these young players and don't sell them, I'm more optimistic that Pochettino will actually really revive them and actually get a huge tune out of them. Because I think part of the issue with Ange was that Ange wasn't really ever a guy that had a lot of experience of promoting young players. It wasn't really the case at Celtic. When you probably look at the clubs he was at before, it probably was just more about, his drive and his will to try to win things, not as much develop young players. I think he was even a little bit hesitant at times to throw in some of the young players on a consistent basis. It felt like, he gave them more of a chance than I would say Thomas Frank has. But then that moves me on to my other point, is that Thomas Frank seemed to have really no desire at all to play any of the young players. Also because at Brentford, they don't even have an academy in the first place. If we are to sign all these young players that Johan Lange seems so obsessed with, we have to have a manager in charge that has experience and has that proven background of trusting young players, but also getting the most out of them and
developing them as well.
Yeah, developing them. That's the exact word. But it seemed like Ange and Thomas Frank, in my opinion, weren't those guys. Ange was almost, if anything, forced to play young players. He basically had no senior players really to pick from. So I don't even give Ange that much credit, actually, when it comes to playing young players, because he would often play Timo Werner over Mikey Moore if he was given the chance. So I think that says enough for me. So hopefully Pochettino at least improves and develops young players like Dave.
I actually think this squad is made for him. You look at the amount of youngsters we've got out on loan. We had a lot of them out on loan at the time when Pochettino walked in. We had some players that were out not performing. He got rid of them. He pulled up some players from the academy like Ben Taleb and Mason and people like that. And I think right now where this squad is situated, it is made for someone like him. He's one of the only ones in modern day football that will actually take the time or is not afraid to even go, okay, you don't want to do my running during the week? No problem. You're out of the team. Youngster, come on up. You're in this weekend. And I think, that's something that Ange Postecoglou maybe let himself down with at times. And I think Thomas Frank has as well, persisting with guys that maybe aren't having you. And I think that's where the downfall came in. Pochettino didn't do that. You're not having me. Good luck. Out you go. And I think, this is what we need right now to drag us forward. And I think I just look at the amount of young players. I think there's a lot there Pochettino can develop.
Yeah. And Jack and Colin, thanks for being here with us, guys. Appreciate you guys going a little bit longer with us. Of course, lots to discuss, as always, with Spurs, and probably plenty to discuss next week with whatever outcome from the North London derby ends up occurring. But appreciate you guys. Thank you both for coming on.
Lovely.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs, as always. All right, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for all the business and the previews. Appreciate you guys. Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs.